What's up, guys? Welcome to the Dig Your Dream podcast. I am your host, Ray Navarrete, Ray Dig Me, Coach Ray all day, whichever Ray you know me as. I'm just Ray every day, and this is my weekly word. So here we go again. I'm back. The podcast is back. I know last year, to start off 2024, I told you guys that I was bringing back the Dig Your Dream podcast after a little bit of a pause. I was so gung-ho, so excited, and I actually started to do it. A weekly word every week. My plan was to bring you a new, fresh interview with a special guest once a month, and I was ready to rock and roll in 2024. And then something happened. And now looking back, now that I'm recording this, it really turned out to be just a terrible excuse. So back in late spring, early summer of 2024, I lost access to my email account that is associated with the Dig Your Dream podcast. For whatever reason, for those of you who know me well, I'm not very tech savvy. And after years and years and years of using this same email address, I just lost access to it. I wasn't able to get back in. I thought I had all my credentials, all my account numbers, all my passwords, and I just could not get back in to this email address that was associated with my podcast. So number one, I use that challenge or obstacle or frustrating moment as part one of the excuse. And as I was trying to solve that issue, I was busy trying to balance and manage the rest of my life, my full-time job at the office, my growing coaching career and growing baseball business with Double Major, and more importantly, being a husband and a father. So I just couldn't find myself to spend 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes each week trying to solve this issue. So I basically just put the blame on the fact that I had trouble with my email address that was associated with the podcast. And, if I was listening to myself say this, or if someone said this to me last year, my first thought would be, well, the person just doesn't want it bad enough. And the reality is that really is the truth. So two things are true in this story that I'm telling you. Number one, I did lose access to my email address that was associated with my podcast. And it really threw me for a loop, got me all razzled and frazzled and frustrated. And, because of that, I used that as kind of like a crutch as to why I wasn't able to continue the Dig Your Dream podcast. So anyway, after over a year, I finally told myself that regardless of the email situation, I was going to get back into the Dig Your Dream podcast because, like I said last year, I truly enjoy it. It's a way for me to express myself, and looking back on the project, believe it or not, over the course of 6 or 7 years when I started back in 2018, I have published over 270 episodes. Now, that's not the biggest podcast in history, and for sure, I definitely don't have the largest audience. But the reality is, I have recorded and published over 270 episodes. And whether or not one person or 1 million people have watched or listened to it, I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I have taken the time to do something that I enjoy. But what I'm not proud of is, I use last year's little challenge with my email address and my podcast account as a reason to not continue to do it. And, as I continue to grow as a baseball coach, as I continue to grow in the business world, I've really come to learn and understand that if you want something, you will find a way to make it happen. If you want something and there's a problem holding you back from accomplishing or achieving that thing that you want, you will take the time to find a solution, regardless of how much time it will take. And, I'm guilty of not living by those words. The reality is, if I truly, truly, truly wanted to make sure that I recorded a new weekly word episode each week, a new special guest interview each month, I would have taken the time and I would have kept trying to find a solution until I did, just like I did this week. For some reason, something clicked in my head where I said, you know what, this is crazy. I still want to do my Dig Your Dream podcast. I have so many cool ideas, so many things that I want to share, so many people I want to talk to, regardless if anybody watches or listens. And I'm not doing it because my email address isn't working. That sounds like an excuse to me, and it really is. So anyway, beyond the email fiasco, I was able to find a solution to my email address and link it back to my podcast account. I'm back in. I'm able to start recording, start publishing, and start sharing some of my thoughts, my feelings, and we'll see where this goes. So yesterday, when I finally got back into my podcast account, albeit extremely small. Like, listen, we're not talking about a huge project here, but it is one that I really, really did enjoy. It was cool to go through the numbers and the analytics and the metrics, and to see, look at the numbers of the 270 plus episodes, how many people tuned in, how many of the episodes were downloaded, which ones were the most popular, which ones were probably not resonating with people. Some of the episodes had over or close to 1,000 people that listened to them, which is pretty cool for someone like me who's not a celebrity. Some of the episodes that I was super stoked about had 16 people listen to them. So it was really cool to get back into the account, and it's cool to be here. Like I said, the Dig Your Dream podcast is something that I truly enjoy. This is not a project at the moment that I'm looking for anything more than the opportunity to share some of the things that I am experiencing or going through in my daily lives, in my multifaceted career, so to speak, in business and in baseball, and also being a family man. I've always been interested, not just in baseball, believe it or not. I've always been extremely interested in business and entrepreneurship, and of course sports. And the Dig Your Dream podcast for me was a project that allows me to enjoy all of those things. So many people know me as Ray the baseball player, or now Coach Ray All Day, the baseball coach. There are other people that just know me in the business world now, working with my clients at the office. And there are some people that just know me as an entrepreneur who started a clothing brand many, many years ago and helped build that up to where that brand got into national retailers. I believe that the Dig Your Dream podcast, at least for me, can be a space where I can share all of those experiences and talk to and interview and share stories of like-minded people that enjoy, thriving and growing in multiple facets, in multiple spaces. So that's what we're going to do. So the Dig Your Dream podcast is back. This was my first weekly word, I believe, in close to a year. I'm looking forward to publishing this recording, sharing some of this on social media, and we'll see where this goes, to be quite honest with you. For those of you that listen to this, the few of you that probably will listen to this, via audio, you'll notice that I no longer have that cool intro, or at least I don't think I'm going to put it as part of it, because I have to take the time to create and produce a new intro with a new track. If you notice, there is no sponsors yet on the weekly word. I don't have any guests lined up for our Dig Your Dream, Dig Me discussion interview series. I have none of that lined up. And part of the reason why I don't is that was also another excuse that I was leaning on as a crutch. Throughout last year, I kept telling myself that I don't have a new track as an introduction. I don't have the new intro catchphrases or lines. I don't have any sponsors. I don't have any scripts written. I don't have any guests lined up for podcast interviews. And all of that laundry list, I thought were valid reasons to not do it. And now looking back, they were just nothing more than bad excuses. And it hurts me to say that, actually, right? Because I'd be the first one to probably critique someone if they were sharing those bad excuses as to why they didn't pursue a project. So, here I am. We're back. All I can do is put my phone here on my tripod, or, put my phone or camera on my desk, hook it up to the mic, and share a little bit about, what I'm going through, some of the experience I had during the week, the lessons that I learned during the week. That's also another reason why I want to continue the Dig Your Dream podcast. In my professional career, both in business and in baseball, whether it's, in the office or on the baseball diamond, I come across so many incredible people, so many talented people, so many brilliantly bright, smart people. And, I feel very fortunate that I'm in a position to sit in the office across the table from so many smart, bright, successful people in business. And, equally as fortunate to be able to share the baseball field with some of the best coaches, some of the most exciting and passionate young baseball players, and to be part of a really cool baseball community. And that's why I believe the weekly word, part of the Dig Your Dream podcast, is something that you guys can look forward to each week, because I want to share some of the lessons that I learned from these people. I want to share, some of the things that they pass along, some of the advice that they may have shared with me that week. And hopefully, some of those stories and little nuggets and bits of advice that I learned and took from them, I'll be able to share with you via this podcast. And, hopefully that could provide some value to any of you out there that are looking for that kind of content. So, like I said, here we are, the Dig Your Dream podcast, my weekly word. We're just going to get back into this, and I'm going to do it with no pressure. If next week the weekly word comes along and I still don't have a new intro track, I don't have a new intro script, I don't have any sponsors, I don't have any podcast interview guests lined up, so be it. I'll get there. I will get there as long as I keep going forward, as long as I keep trying, and as long as I don't lean on the excuses as a reason to not move forward. And I think that if there was anything that I want all of you to think about this week is, what is something that you would really like to do? What is something that has been top of mind for a long time? What is something that has, been in your heart for a long time that you just want to do, you want to try, and for whatever reason, you just haven't taken that next step? And if you really look hard and you're really honest with yourself, more than likely, it's not just because you're busy or because life is hard or because you have a current challenge that's holding you back. And I'm sure in some instances, there might be those reasons. But for the majority of us, the main reason why you're not taking that next step, the main reason why you haven't made progress pursuing that dream or project is because there's just a really bad excuse that you're leaning on. So, if there's anything you take from this week's weekly word is, take a look at that dream, take a look at that passion project, that pursuit you want to chase, and ask yourself, what do you need to take the first step towards it? And like I said, that first step isn't going to get you across the finish line immediately. That first step isn't going to build a monster of a business, or it's not going to build a huge audience or large following right away. It's not going to, help you become a millionaire overnight. But what it will do by taking that first step, it will get you headed in the right direction. It will help you get forward. And that's the only way you can get there. You have to be willing to take that first step. You have to be willing to get going. You have to be willing to believe you can do it. So that's all I got. So that was my first weekly word in almost a year. Thank you again for tuning into the Dig Your Dream podcast. I'm looking forward to continuing to put this project together, finding out exactly how it's going to come together. There are going to be a lot of pieces to the Dig Your Dream podcast. One more thing before I let you go. Another thing that was concerning me about the Dig Your Dream podcast was, initially back in the day, the Dig Your Dream podcast was going to be the podcast complement to the Dig Me clothing brand that we have built over the years. And although that will always be the initial inspiration, it's not going to be the only reason we're doing this podcast. So right off the bat, the podcast has evolved a little bit. And I want the Dig Your Dream podcast to be exactly what the title says. I want it to be about talking about the things that we want to do, the things that we want to pursue, the things that we want to build, the life that we want to live. And I want people to come on the show, or I want to share stories or lessons or conversations that I've had that can help, inspire, motivate you, me, whoever is willing to listen on how to get there. And that's what the Dig Your Dream podcast is going to be. And it's going to be a collection of a lot of things. I thought for a little bit that maybe I had to do, a podcast strictly for entrepreneurship, or maybe I would do a podcast strictly for what I'm doing at work in the business world. And maybe I had to do a podcast strictly for baseball. I've come to the conclusion that there's no reason for that. And the reason why is because the Dig Your Dream podcast can encompass all of that. And if for some reason you're one of the listeners or viewers that love when I have special guests on the podcast because they're, successful entrepreneurs and they're building business, and, you lean more towards that, well, you can tune in when the episode pertains to that. If you're someone that has come to know me as Ray, the baseball player, and now Coach Ray All Day, the baseball coach, and baseball is your thing, and you only want to talk about baseball, and you only want to hear from special guests that are playing professional baseball or college baseball or other well-known baseball coaches, then so be it. Then you can tune into the Dig Your Dream podcast that is specifically tailored for the baseball community, and and anything else in between. So that's what the Dig Your Dream podcast is going to be. I believe it's going to represent the kind of baseball player I used to be. I was a super utility player. Unfortunately, I wasn't great at one specific thing. I just provided value in, many positions, multiple positions. And because I was able to contribute to the team in, a bunch of different ways, it allowed me to play at a high level for a long time. And I feel like that's also the kind of person that I've become professionally as well, too, where I can provide value to people in the business world. I can provide value to people on the baseball field and the baseball community, and of course somewhere in the middle for all of you who are entrepreneurs. I have a little bit of experience in there too, and so that's what the Dig Your Dream podcast is going to be. It's going to be a collection of a lot of cool things, and we're going to see how this plays out, over the next few weeks and months and years, and that's one of the lessons that I truly learned about the initial pause I took from the Dig Your Dream podcast, which still makes me very disappointed. And then, of course, me leaning on these bad excuses last year with everything that happened with the email address and my podcast account. Because the reality is this, as I mentioned earlier, I have recorded and published over 270 episodes, far from the greatest and most productive podcast in history, but 270 plus more than zero. And it gets me frustrated to think that if I never push pause, if I never stopped the podcast, how many episodes would be recorded and published today? And I'll leave you with this. Yesterday, I was going through, like I said, the analytics and metrics of the podcast episodes that I've recorded and published thus far. And like I said, some of them actually had decent viewership or listenership, if that's a word, or downloads. And some of them had 16, 28, 33 people that tuned in. And I'm grateful for both of the numbers, the ones that had higher numbers, the ones that had lower numbers. So the reality is this episode, the first one in almost a year, this weekly word, who knows? Maybe there might be 4 people that tune in, maybe 4 people that tune in and listen to this most recent weekly word. But if I am consistent, if I am willing to stick to the plan, if I'm willing to record and publish a new weekly word every single week, every week, not just for a year, not just for 5, not just for 10, but for as long as I'm lucky enough to be here, maybe one day it'll go from 4 people who listened to 400, to 4,000, to 400,000, and who knows, maybe even 4 million. And I'm not saying we're going to get there, but what I'm saying is we can't get there if we don't try. So thanks for tuning in to the first Dig Your Dream. This is my weekly word in over a year. Looking forward to checking back in with you guys next week. Thank you in advance to everybody who has listened to the podcast over the years. And thank you to anyone who's new. That is just realizing that I tried this project a couple of times in the past and I'm willing to try again. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And I'd appreciate it if you let people know that the Dig Your Dream podcast is back. Thanks again, guys. I look forward to talking to you next week. Peace.